Muhammad presents, yeah, that's right, me, the origin of civil engineering. Introducing circles, triangles, circles and triangles, squares, bubbles, and all of that stuff. So here we have my Minecraft world, which I've probably worked on a lot over the day or so. Not just today, but a few days. And what I'm here showing you is the different aspects of it, like civil engineering. We work on roads, we work on structural houses. We have a lot of questions here, so these are our questions. So what is civil engineering? And then we have some people who had some huge contributions, and objects as well. Pyramids, just get out the way, man. Just come on, man. Be respectful here. So yeah, as I was saying, we have pyramids, we have Archimedes, who was very, very helpful, and we have the Mesopotamians. And then we also have some more examples of what we do. We work on houses, we work on just interesting structures in general. We develop things that may not always seem the most functional, but they're still us. And there's a lot of math involved in this as well. And this is where we can see some more experimental things that we may be doing involving energy consumption and things like that. But that's more along the lines of environmental engineering, which is a subset of civil engineering. And then here we have another thing we work on, which is our railway systems. And right here I made a minecart example of, just a minecart. It's going down a railway just to exhibit how this might work and things like that. And then we also have arches. And yeah, so today's question, of course, is, well, let's just wait it out. But is, what is civil engineering? So while this is typing out, we gotta admit, so there's a few things that may encompass civil engineering. We have bridges, we have roads, we have everything else. But what is it? Civil engineering is, very simply put, the engineering school that designs functional structures. There we go, the functional structures in day-to-day life. And that's not just including like simple things, but also the roads we make. And these are two different examples of a road. That would be more of an expressway, and the other one just a regular state road. And then we have, our towers and things like that. And see, back before we had a lot of set disciplines, all these things followed under the same path, which of course is civil engineering, which is the second oldest discipline, only after military engineering. So where did it start? The man you're looking at here is John Smeaton, the man who is widely known as the first person to ever actively call himself a civil engineer. And he's also known as the father of civil engineering. See, civil engineering is very, very heavy in how we design different things, how we allow things to be grown and things like that. But it didn't really start with him. He just happened to carry on the name. This was the 18th century, so everything was a bit differently operated. But the first civil engineering school was opened in 1747 in France, according to McNeil Engineering, which is the site that I'm luckily able to find that gave me a much quicker summary of civil engineering than the one that other sites provided. However, to go a lot further back, civil engineering did not, of course, start in London or France or pretty much anywhere in Europe for that matter. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years, first starting around the BCE era. And it started with a man known as Imhotep. And he was the man who built one of the first pyramids for an Egyptian pharaoh. And then after that, we have someone who we're going to look at next, who is Archimedes. And Archimedes is widely known as one of the most important engineers and inventors of any time period, regardless of, location or anything like that. Archimedes was the man who this man was so smart that he was not just a mathematician, but he was also a physicist, an engineer, an astronomer, and a crazy inventor. And he didn't really stop at basic engineering, but he was able to also make military engineering strategies as well. He was very, very heavy in Greco-Roman invasions and battles that lasted so much longer than we can even get into in this video. But he was the reason that we know about the approximation of pi. He is the reason that we know about the screw pump and compound pulleys. And he was also the man who found the area under a parabola. So mad at somebody for giving you homework, I say be mad at him. But the thing that makes him a civil engineer and what makes him so useful in the civil engineering world is specifically the compound pulley. Compound pulleys, or block and tackles, were something that were a common issue that had not been solved. By pulling up massive amounts of weight, they were able to restructure much larger and better designed objects without worrying about people dying as much or the strain on someone's back, meaning they could work harder, longer, and more efficiently. All around. Speaking of people who happened to make some big war efforts, let's go on to talk about the Romans, the Greeks' biggest enemy and eventual downfall. So the Romans were a people who, of course, were very big in war, but they were also people who were very, very smart, and they didn't in battle, but they were also very proficient in the arts, including plays, so a lot of philosophical debates, and of course physical art such as statues and like paintings. But they were also mathematicians, and very, very good ones at that. Now, we're not really going into the specifics of who is the best, who does this and who does that, but one thing I would love to focus on is the aqueducts. The aqueducts were one of the most important inventions and one of the coolest things that we can see from the previous eras in society. Because one thing that it relied on was gravity. And not just a little gravity, but all gravity. And this water was able to go around the entire Roman Empire, or the initial Roman Empire as it started, and provide water for both cleansing and, of course, drinking. This was able to revolutionize pretty much all of Roman life, because by applying these new inventions, it was also easier to not go up a hill that would eventually break some old lady's back or things like that. So one thing that we're looking at is, in previous years of civil engineering, we focused a lot more on ease of access and removing the difficulties of life that may have been there before. Finally, let's talk about the Mesopotamians, who were some of the very first people to ever touch Earth and form a true civilization. Often known as the first civilization, at least in the historical context that we know of scientifically, the Mesopotamians were a group of people who lived in what is now known as modern-day Iraq, but originally known as the Fertile Crescent, which was between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Middle East. They were, of course, the first civilization that we know of to have made such advancements. They have a lot of the titles, they hold a lot of cakes. But one thing that they were very big on was stonework. Because they didn't have a lot to work with, stonemasons were very, very prominent in the region. And so a lot of the homes and waterways they made and things like that were pretty much all made of stone, but due to some rudimentary civil engineering processes, everything turned out fine. They also had their own variations of pyramids. However, they were not for the dead, but for God. They were called ziggurats, and they were temples. The ziggurats were another great working of civil engineering because it was also made purely out of stone. Because they were one of the first few civilizations out there, there was not as many resources or materials that they could freely choose from. However, this did not stop them. And so to wrap it up, civil engineering is a discipline of engineering that focuses on the functionality of structures that we see around us every day. It includes waterways, bridges, structural housing, so that's like pillars and things like that, and more in the ground things like surveying of land, waterways, and even mechanical things, but that's somewhat arguable, like pulleys, like shout out Archimedes. It had many, many adders to its wonderful amount of historical evidence and context. However, some standouts, of course, were the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, Romans, and men like Imhotep and Archimedes. And also, of course, Mr. Smeaton. It has its roots officially in London and France, but it's all around the world and everywhere you look. So just take a glance.